You are being manipulated. Every day, hundreds of times. Welcome to the propaganda game. None of us can escape it. The best we can learn is to discriminate how we're being manipulated, so we can recognize and avoid the grip of the techniques being employed. Hi, I'm Buzz Allen. On our free game website at propagandagame.org, you can learn about more than 50 different techniques that are used every day to influence, persuade, and convince us to buy products, accept ideas, or change our viewpoint about the most controversial topics of today. This site has thousands of examples from daily life, politics, relationships, and advertising that you can use either as a solitary self-discovery program or a multiplayer game you can play with your friends. It can even be used in classrooms. However you play, the propaganda game will teach you to discriminate and recognize the many attempts to influence our thinking that happen every day. In this video we're going to focus on the red-hot debate topic of gun control in America. We'll be looking at memes used by both sides to see what kinds of techniques from the game are being used to manipulate or convince us that a particular notion is correct. In this first slide, we've got an example from both sides of the issue, one from the anti-gun control side and one from the pro-gun control side. They're both using the same technique, and the technique is called a leading question. A leading question is one that either dictates or suggests the answer, or it places the answerer in an undesirable position where they're either incriminated or somehow disadvantaged no matter how they answer the question. In the first one, we see a baby with a cocked eyebrow saying, "So, making guns illegal will take them off the street? We should make heroin and meth illegal too." This is not only a leading question, but it's also using another technique called attacking a straw man. When you attack a straw man, your opponent either restates your position falsely or exaggerates the consequences that follow from your position. In this case, no one on the side advocating gun control is suggesting that we make guns illegal to take them all off the street. They're only talking about licensing and registration and education in terms of their proper use. And obviously, whenever we make a law against something, there are going to be people who don't obey the law, just as there are with drug laws. On the other side of this issue, we see a popular picture of Gene Wilder in the meme from Willy Wonka, and he asked the leading question, "So, gun laws won't work because criminals don't follow laws? Tell me, why then do we have laws at all?" I'll leave it to you to see which application of the technique of leading question was more convincing, but they both use it. In this next example, there's two new techniques being shown. The first one is repetition. With repetition, we buy or believe in something that we've heard or seen multiple times. First meme says guns. We defend our president with guns. We defend our congressmen with guns. We defend our governors with guns. We defend our celebrities with guns. Our sporting events, our jewelry stores, banks, office buildings, factories, and courts with guns. We defend our children with a sign that says, "This is a gun-free zone." And then we call someone with a gun if there's an emergency. Obviously, the use of repetition here is meant to drive the point home and make it more convincing. The second example is a case of causal oversimplification. And this is where a complex event or situation is explained by reference to only one or two causes or solutions, when in fact, the situation is sophisticated enough that there are many that are responsible. Here you see a young man being spanked firmly, and it says, "What America needs is child control, not gun control." Now, I don't think there's very many serious people on either side of this issue that actually believe that wholesale spanking of the youth of America is somehow going to stop gun violence. But that's what this meme would have you believe. Causal oversimplification. Here are two pro-gun control memes that are using the same technique, which is called drawing the line. With drawing the line, a person draws sharp distinctions where it's actually inappropriate to draw them, and often tries to force you to choose between one or the other of these options. First one's a quote from Ozzy Osbourne. It says, "I keep hearing this thing that guns don't kill people, but people kill people. If that's the case, why do we give people guns when they go to war? Why not just send the people?" This is not only a leading question like the previous examples, but draws a sharp distinction here between having to choose either guns are the only thing that kills people or people are the only thing that kills people. And the truth is, most of the people that are killed by people using guns. So it's a little more complicated than just one or the other. Second example, again presents a drawing the line, and it starts off saying, "Our Second Amendment raises a question. Quote, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, was intended to keep guns in the hands of," and it only gives you two choices. A well-regulated militia, folks in uniforms rushing Sandy Hook Elementary, or B, any psychopath who wants to buy any kind of gun from Guns Galore store where they have an assault rifle blowout, buy one now and get one free. So obviously, these are not the only two choices for responsible gun ownership in America, and never would be under any kind of scenario. This is an artificial drawing the line where it's not appropriate. The next two examples are both anti-gun control examples. The first uses a new technique called selected instances. And this is like cherry picking, where support is drawn for a position by only choosing those cases or instances which back it up, and consciously disregarding any cases or instances which either contradict or don't support the position. And here you see there's descriptions of two countries, Honduras and Switzerland. They both have 8.2 million population. In the case of Honduras, it bans citizens from owning guns and supposedly has the highest homicide rate in the entire world. Switzerland requires every citizen to own guns because all adult males are required to be in the Swiss Army and keep rifles at home. And they have one of the lowest homicide rates in the entire world. Now, there are certainly countries in the world like Japan and others which have very restrictive gun control laws and very low homicide rates at the same time, but none of those contradicting cases was fit to be shown here. So clearly this is cherry-picking selected instances. The next cartoon is a spoof, which is an appeal to ridicule, which is an attempt to influence us to accept a proposition by poking fun at those who oppose it. It's also a lighthearted use of imaginary technical jargon. And the technique of technical jargon, someone uses technical language or unfamiliar words, whether they're real words from the dictionary or invented, for the purpose of trying to impress people. And this has a picture of an assault rifle and says, "Liberals' Guide to Guns." And of course here liberals are assumed to not know the gun from their elbow. And there are such features here described as the stock being a folding thingy for easy concealment in back pocket, periscope for shooting around corners, auto aimer, missile launcher, scary looking black thingies, silencer and night vision on the front of the barrel, bullet button, super high capacity clip holding 5,000 bullets, and an auto trigger that allows firing of 10,000 bullets per second. And in order to hide it, there's a pistol grip which allows for quick draw from an ankle holster. Clearly these aren't even real features of an assault rifle, and the whole attempt here is to make anyone who's in favor of not having assault rifles on every street corner made to look ridiculous and uninformed. Here are two pro-gun control memes. The first one is what we would call an appeal to practical consequences. This is a propaganda technique where an effort is made to persuade us to buy or believe by appealing to our concern for our individual welfare. If we do what we're supposed to, we'll get benefits. If we don't do what we're supposed to do, then there's consequences will be harmful. So in this case, you've got a picture of Abraham Lincoln. For what reason, I don't know. It's just, I suppose, to add more gravitas to the headline. And it says, "Guns in the classroom is an excellent way to prepare children for prison." Nobody wants their kids to go to prison, so I guess we better not have guns in the classroom. And these consequences are so overstated that this ad actually is also an example of attacking a straw man. Certainly, one could teach classes on gun safety and use in a classroom in such a way that the students would have more respect and understanding of how they work and what kind of care should be taken to avoid accidents. And that very well could lead to less accidents in homes that have guns. The next example is an example of a new technique called emotional terms. And this is any phrase or word that expresses or arouses strong feelings for or against an object, of strong emotional feelings. It's a quote from Bill Moyers. "The NRA is the enabler of death, paranoid, delusional, and as venomous as a scorpion. With the weak-kneed acquiescence of our politicians, the National Rifle Association has turned the Second Amendment of the Constitution into a cruel and deadly hoax." Obviously, this is chock full of emotional terms and very short on any kind of facts, statistics, or reasoned arguments. Okay, the next two memes are both anti-gun control memes. Clint Eastwood is a poster guy for anti-gun control, probably because of his famous characters of The Man with No Name and Dirty Harry. He's also espoused conservative positions in public before. But these are both examples of causal oversimplification, where a complex event or situation is explained by reference to either one or two causes or solutions. And in this first one, there's a picture of Nancy Pelosi supposedly asking, "What can we do to stop mass shootings?" And the Man with No Name says, "Shoot back." In the second one, the Man with No Name is gripping his rifle and saying, "The problem is not guns. It's hearts without God, homes without discipline, schools without prayer, and courts without justice," implying that a firm indoctrination in proper Christian values would keep all gun violence from occurring. And the truth is, we've had Christianity widely utilized in America since its inception, as well as the presence of guns, and we still have the highest rate of gun violence in the world. These next two examples from pro-gun control are examples of selected instances, again, cherry picking, where support's drawn for a position by only choosing the cases which back it up and not those that will contradict it. First one is a picture of the Reagan assassination attempt, and it says, "Ronald Reagan was surrounded by Secret Service agents when he was shot. I guess they just needed a few armed math teachers." The next one is, "This man killed 13 people and injured 29 others on a military base, surrounded by guns and people who were trained to use them. More guns won't solve the problem." Obviously, there's no cases here where well-trained and armed guards were able to take out an assassin before widespread mayhem occurred. And certainly there have been some cases of that as well. So again, selected instances. I have to admit, in looking through more than 500 different memes for picking the most interesting ones for this presentation, many of the memes on the side of anti-gun control tend to use more of the exploitive techniques, like appeals to ridicule and appeals to prejudice. And here's a couple of rather sharp examples. First one's got a guy in camo sighting down the barrel of a rifle straight at your face and says, "I refuse to debate gun control with people who eat Tide Pods and don't know what gender they are." This is a faux use of a technique of academic detachment. In academic detachment, one refuses to commit or even debate a subject because one either sees merits or problems on both sides. In this case, he's refusing to even debate it because he doesn't feel that the people that oppose his position are worthy of even discussing it. Further, obviously there's an appeal to ridicule, saying people are so silly they don't know the detergent is not supposed to be eaten, and they're so confused that they don't know what gender they are, an obvious appeal to prejudice against gays and transgender individuals. So this one has a dark edge to it. And the next one takes it even further. It's a couple who've been interrupted in bed. Apparently the guy found a pistol under the girl's pillow, and he stopped and said, "Oh, I told her guns make me feel uncomfortable. She said we should both see other men." The implication being, if you don't like guns, you must be gay. Again, appeals to ridicule and prejudice. The use of irrelevant techniques like numbers and repetition is very common. In this first meme for pro-gun control, it starts off saying, in 1 year, guns murdered, and it goes on with a bunch of numbers. 17 in Finland, 35 in Australia, 39 in England, 60 in Spain, 194 in Germany, 200 in Canada, and 9,484 in the United States. The reason we can't solve this problem? Republican corruption. So this is a whole bunch of techniques rolled into one. There's the numbers, where we buy or believe because of the large numbers associated with a product or proposition. There's emotional terms like murdered and corruption. And there's causal oversimplification, where it's all blamed on Republican corruption, when in fact the NRA is pretty happy to spread its contributions around both sides of the aisle. The next example uses again numbers and repetition. It's got a pile of guns showing a curve of ever exponentially increasing gun manufacturing and purchases in the United States. And there's a little figure dancing around on top of the pile with an NRA cap saying, "They're coming for your guns! They're coming for your guns! They're coming for your guns!" So the implication being that the NRA is using scare tactics to boost fear and people rushing out to buy guns to protect themselves. Again, the repetition and the emotional terms and the numbers. Some more gems with Clint Eastwood. This first one is using a new technique called faulty analogy. An analogy only really makes sense in a controversial argument when there's some sort of underlying causal relationship between the different ideas being compared. In this one, he's quoted as saying, it's not a quote, but it's supposedly, the man with no name is saying, grabbing guns from law-abiding people because criminals have them is like castrating me because my neighbors have too many kids. Now, obviously, the upshot of most gun control proposals is not grabbing guns from law-abiding people. It's using licensing and registration and education to assure that it's only law-abiding people, hopefully, that get the guns. And certainly, castration is a technique for family planning, if you just happen to be in the neighborhood of a bunch of kids, is a completely faulty analogy and exaggerating the consequences here, to the point where this is another example of attacking a straw man. In the next meme, this is an actual quote from Clint, and it's a rather clever shift of meaning. Shift of meaning is a language technique where the same word is used more than once in an expression or an argument, but different meanings associated with it. And here again, Clint is saying, I have a strict gun control policy. If there's a gun around, I want to be in control of it. Metaphor and simile are literary techniques. They also can be used as propaganda techniques when applied to controversial situations and arguments. It's a favorite analogy of the gun control crowd that licensing guns will be similar to licensing driving cars. And so in this meme we see, remember when government took away our cars by requiring licensing and registration? And of course that's never happened. And the suggestion is that it wouldn't happen under gun control measures either. The next one is, wanting sensible gun laws doesn't make me anti-gun, just like how wanting sensible traffic laws doesn't make me anti-car. So both are actually similes and metaphors. And if you're arguing a highly controversial subject, it's probably better to avoid similes and metaphors and analogies and actually just deal with the issue straight on, deal with the facts and the statistics and the arguments for or against, rather than resorting to more creative and literary devices. The final ad wins the award for the most number of propaganda techniques from the game rolled into one meme. And this one there's a new technique of irrelevance used here, whereby people with degrees and titles or famous individuals are utilized to supposedly argue for a position, and thereby that makes it more convincing. And this one has the title Famous Gun Nuts, and then there's pictures of Teddy Roosevelt, Mahatma Gandhi, the great innovator for nonviolent resistance that led to the independence of India from British rule, Thomas Jefferson, this famous founding father revolutionary and author of the Declaration of Independence, and of all people, the Dalai Lama, the head of the Buddhist religion in Tibet and a world-famous advocate for nonviolence. And all of them are shown with quotes that can be somehow interpreted to back up the idea of gun ownership. The text in this ad goes on with leading questions and attacking a straw man in the following way. It says, some people hold the crazy belief that an ordinary citizen should be able to own guns to protect themselves, their country, or their freedom. These radical, government-hating, antisocial individuals are nothing more than gun nuts. Is this the kind of company you'd want to keep? So the leading question, and of course the spoofing that gun control advocates consider all gun owners to be crazy radicals, and then of course you have these august personages supposedly arrayed on the side of gun ownership. The final salvo in here is the use of the technique of slogans, and a slogan is a short, catchy phrase that evokes some sort of positive response, and the whole reason for using slogans is to get you to have some favorable attitude because of the slogan, even though it may not have much to do with the actual position you're advocating. And if you do have a favorable attitude, then the slogan is successful. Here the slogan is no gun control. Gun control is for victims. Nobody wants to be a victim, so therefore nobody should want gun control. You'll often find in politics and really effective advertising many of the techniques from the game rolled into a single example, and that just makes it all the more powerful. So if you'd like to see more examples of propaganda in action in politics, relationships, the media, and daily life, please visit our website at propagandagame.org. It's free. And as you play the game, you'll find that your vision will expand and you'll begin to see these techniques at work all around you, all the time. And once you become proficient at finding creative examples of them, we really hope that you will share your own examples with us with the game database, and that allows everyone else to play using your examples as well. So happy hunting.